Okay, we are going to make a start. It is so lovely to see so many people online with us tonight. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kyron Johnson. I'm the Western Australia and South Australian State Manager for Opportunity. I'm excited to be your host tonight because we are very much looking forward to having Mark Daniels speak to us, our Asia Programs Director. He's going to share with us tonight life in focus in a time of pandemic. A few things first, though, about how we're running this evening. We have a great crowd on tonight, and I'd actually really love to hear from you. There is some options down below. There is the Q&A options. I'll be chatting with Mark. We'll be kind of asking a few, going back and forth a little bit. So if you've got a question that comes up that you'd love to hear Mark answer, pop that in the Q&A box, and we'll have a look at that. Hopefully we'll get a chance to have some time with that. And also, if you just want to send greetings or chat with everyone, there is the chat option down the bottom. If you click on that, it brings up the option to send a comment to the panelists, but also to everyone else. And I'd love it if we were able to share things with everyone tonight so we're all on the same page. That is that. We will also be doing a recording of tonight, so we will send that out to you in the next day or so. It'll end up on Facebook, and you can actually share that with others as well, just to keep people in the loop. Now, for those of you who may be new to Opportunity, here's just a little bit about us. We give small loans, often as little as a few $100s, to families living in poverty to help them grow their own small business. This enables them to earn an income so that they can feed, clothe, and send their children to school. So we're helping families work their way out of poverty with dignity and purpose. We work with local microfinance partners in India and Indonesia as a main focus to help more than 6 million families with small loans, and 98% of these loans are repaid and recycled. So we're able to help more people and more families over time as they get repaid and then recycled, and then on to the next family, and then on to the next family. We also have other programs, and you can see on this slide here, that address other barriers that keep families trapped in poverty. So they're programs around helping families live safe and healthy lives, and also send children to school. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an overview of who we are and what we're about at Opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 shortly and its impact on the most vulnerable. And I've got some figures that have just been updated recently, and they're probably already out of date. But India right now, I've come across, there's just under 75,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. They're approaching 2,500 deaths. In Indonesia right now, there's almost 15,000 cases and just over 1,000 confirmed deaths. Now, figures for both of these countries I will consider extremely low. We can be pretty confident that their testing rates are not the same as the majority of the other countries across the world. Their cases per million are low, and their total deaths per million are low. So we've got a fairly clear indication that we're not getting the full picture of the coronavirus across India and Indonesia specifically, and the true impact and devastating effects that will have is still to come to light. So we are yet to find out what is going to happen. And so that's why it's urgent that we talk about these things, and urgent that we continue to focus on the work of Opportunity. Now, I am going to introduce Mark Daniels. He is the Asia Programs Director for Opportunity International. He's been with Opportunity for 20 and a little bit years, and 10 of those were based in the Philippines, and he has a huge amount of experience to share with us. So, Mark, thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to have a bit of a chat, but I first really wanted to find out a little bit more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, I just want to thank everyone for joining tonight. It's always a privilege and honour to talk about the work of Opportunity, and even more so is the importance in the current pandemic. So what's my story? Just a little bit about me. I was born in Gosford on the central coast of New South Wales into a loving, typical middle-class Australian family. My life was focused on sport, both watching and playing. My father was a larrikin who loved a punt and a beer, and my grandfather was an illegal bookmaker and a billiard ball owner. So I come from very good Aussie stock. I describe it a bit like a Meadow Lee family, but growing up, my dream was to get rich. And to make $1 million before I was 30. And, you know, that was when $1 million was actually worth something in the Sydney property market. You know, so I was really driven as a result. I was motivated by greed and had dollar signs in my eyes. and ended up going into accounting for all the wrong reasons. So I suppose one could say that my drugs were money, wealth, power and position. I always remember commuting down from the Central Coast going to work, and there was some graffiti in a tunnel that I'd read every day. And it used to just say, "You're on the road to nowhere." So I suppose I can say I had a midlife crisis when I was in my early 20s. So I left the accounting world after some great training, great experience, and decided to backpack solo around the world for 14 months. And during that time, I fell in love with Asia, fell in love with the poor. And I first heard about the concept of micro enterprise development, and I thought, wow, that'd be a fantastic if I could get a job, use some of my accounting skills, and help people. So I was fortunate to get a start with Opportunity in 1998, last century, as a project officer. And it's been a great journey. Over the last 22 years, I've learned some great lessons. And I think none more so than, when you enter the world of the vulnerable, we enter a sacred place. And tonight, I really want to talk to you more about some deeper insights into our clients' lives, the behavioural economics of our clients, look at the impact of COVID-19, and then look into the crystal ball of microfinance post the pandemic. So I want to start by, really saying that the world's most exciting entrepreneurs are not in Silicon Valley. They live in rural, urban communities, and they support their families through very hard work, which I call sweat equity. So many of these entrepreneurs are mapping their own road out of poverty, which is inspiring. For some of our clients, it might be as simple as, going from 1 meal a day to 3 meals a day, which is a significant improvement. For others, like a client I once met in Indonesia who started had a pottery business. She's now on her 9th loan cycle and exporting and employing 100 people. So, that community has been transformed. There's a health clinic in the village. There's a school operating. So that's a true story of transformation. I love my work, Kyron, and I'm passionate about solving injustice.
That's really insightful, Mark. Thank you for that. I am interested to hear more about your grandfather at another time. We can have a good conversation about that. And as well as just the reality of graffiti and how that can direct our lives in one direction or another. But unpacking a bit more about Opportunity, what is it that we do as an organisation, that the Opportunity does as an organisation?
Yes, look, we're a specialist microfinance NGO that works with Indigenous organisations or microfinance institutions, providing microcredit with very small loans to the poor, but also micro savings, micro insurance, and money transfer services. We know after 40 years working with the bottom of the pyramid that to increase and diversify incomes, financial services are fantastic because they build human, social and economic assets and improve the lives in ways that reflect the multi-dimensional aspects of poverty. So evidence really shows that microfinance clients choose to invest in a wide range of assets, better nutrition, improved health, access to schooling, maybe a better roof on their homes, and the expansion of small business. I suppose over the last 22 years, the industry is evolving, keeps on evolving, but as I said, it first started as micro enterprise development. It then became known as microcredit, then microfinance, and increasingly we talk about financial inclusion, digital financial inclusion, and now we're talking about financial health because we find everyone is striving to be financially healthy. I think those in poverty define financial health in kind of 3 dimensions. Firstly, it's daily systems that work smoothly. The second is the ability to protect themselves financially when shocks occur. And thirdly, the ability to build for the future. I often say, we're the only charity that gives nothing away because the majority of the funds end up in the loan portfolio. So it's lent to a client and it's repaid. I also love what Muhammad Yunus, the founder of the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, says about poverty, about charity. He says, charity is no solution to poverty. Charity only perpetuates poverty by taking the initiative away from the poor. And I really believe that. Ultimately, we really are about helping our micro entrepreneurs buy better, sell better, and run better.
Yeah, that's really interesting insight around financial health and what that looks like and that focus now. In light of that, can you talk to us a little bit about the current impact of COVID-19 and what that is having on the communities in which Opportunity works with?
Yeah, certainly. I want to share a good image, which I think sums up the current crisis. And the next slide, I think it's a photo of I and Mike Tyson. And I think he said it best when he said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I'm not sure Mike was known for his wisdom, but that is a brilliant quote. Look, COVID-19 is unlike any previous crisis. It differs from anything that we've experienced in our lifetimes. It is more complex, it's more sudden, and it's deeper. So it's really thrown up more questions than answers. It's estimated that about 76% of informal workers, or 1.6 million people, have been impacted. And the International Labour Organization estimates that about 81% have reduced incomes as a result of the lockdown. So, we know COVID-19 is disrupting supply chains. When farmers cannot get their produce into the market, they're forced to waste it. So the food losses are especially high for perishables, such as fruit and veggies, eggs, meat and dairy. So hunger is becoming a problem. We also know that the edict to stay at home means to starve at home for many of our clients. There's no safety net for protection. There's no JobKeeper assistance programs. So a financial shock, like a job loss or an illness, devastates low-income families. What I do know after 20 years is that, poverty is an experience that moves people from coping with one risk after another. I always remember a client that stared me in the face and she said, my life is one big risk. I used to live in the Philippines, as Kyron said, and we used to call it the supermarket for natural disasters. I think there was about 20 typhoons a year, but there was droughts, floods, landslides, volcanoes, you name it, we had it. But I do remember that after one of the typhoons, that they estimated that 500,000 people fell back below the poverty line as a result of losing all their assets. We also know that about 30% of our clients go backwards as a result of a sickness in the family. And so, the medical expenses are so expensive as well for the poor. So, it really is, those in poverty, are constantly getting punched in the face. But what I do know is that many of our clients, they're tougher and more resilient than I and Mike Tyson. Our clients need financing to get back up and running.
Yeah, that's great. And don't forget, you can ask some questions tonight in the Q&A box. But the next one I have is around the measurements of kind of calculating poverty. And like something that we would hear quite frequently is someone living in poverty is someone who earns less than $2 a day. Is that an accurate representation of what it is?
Yeah, look, you often hear that statistic, whether it's $2 or $1.90. It'd be good to spend a little bit of time kind of unpacking this and the behavioural economics of the poor. One of the least remarked on problems of living on $2 a day is you don't actually get $2 a day. I mean, no one arrives in the morning and gives you $2 on the doorstep. So what is important is that in economic poverty, it's not just a matter of low incomes, but irregular and uncertain incomes. So you might earn $20 on day 10, but you still got to put food on the table, pay for school fees, pay for medical expenses, and to meet other basic consumption needs. So poor households need to save and borrow constantly. So living under $2 a day just requires unrelenting vigilance in cash flow management. And I dare say they are better cash flow managers than the majority on this webinar, because they have to be, really. We've learned that typically the poor have up to 8 different sources of access to finance. That could be either through friends, family members, what we call rotating savings and loan schemes, lottery systems, or money lenders, or we call them 5/6s as well, which means you borrow $5 in the morning and you repay $6 at night, which is a 20% interest for the day. So effectively, what the poor actually need is just-in-time financing, or another colleague in the industry calls it liquidity farming, which I'd like to talk a little bit more about. Liquidity farming is, how the poor cultivate relationships to create sources of future cash. So how they make money materialize is the issue. And they normally do it in typically 3 ways. The first way is income generating activities, such as microfinance activities in farming, trading, labouring. The second is either through investment activities. They might buy a cow, which provides daily milk, or they might buy a small piece of land, which they hope will appreciate in value. But liquidity farming is really all about just-in-time financing and nurturing potential sources of future liquidity. I think the liquidity farm is really about cultivating a set of lifelines. So you really need to think Eddie Maguire and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's really creating options in case you need to scramble for liquidity at any point. So the value of one's liquidity farm is assessed by scanning every person, every group, institution, and asset that one comes into contact with, so that it potentially can be harvested at any time on demand. So people in poverty are constantly scanning their liquidity farm to identify opportunities and weaknesses, because really their peace of mind depends on it. So I want to give you some examples of what that could look like. It could be that people in the community save with people in the community, or they provide loans to friends or village groups to build interdependence. It could be putting cash in a locked box and hiding it and giving the key to a friend whom they expect to impress with their determination. It could be spending a little money at village festivals in order to demonstrate belonging and commitment to the community. Or it could be occasional displays of wealth and consumption, which demonstrate success and hence resourcefulness. So all those relationships and resources can be tapped for liquidity in case of need and can be harvested any time on demand. I mean, social capital is very underrated. I mean, studies have shown that social capital reduces the probability of being poor. So how does this work for richer people like us, I suppose? I mean, we don't so much farm liquidity as more we track it and warehouse it. We benefit from fixed salaries, we have insurance policies, we have some accumulated savings balances. So the need for emergency liquidity is much less frequent. But there is, in one sense, one area where we still need to farm liquidity, and that's through our credit score. If we want to build our capacity to borrow in the future, we have to borrow regularly. So in some sense, our liquidity farm is a monocrop to grow our credit rating. Our liquidity farm doesn't exist in our minds, but in a faraway land, which is now called big data. In contrast, most of the elements in poor people's liquidity farms are not tangible. They are tied up in the notions of community and self-esteem. So they can readily imagine value being locked up in a relationship and transferred on a word or a handshake. So it's a virtual garden that, depending on the season of life, can be harvested. And I think no more important at a season at the moment, Kyron, than COVID-19.
Yeah, and so liquidity farming, then, this is kind of my take on it. I'm trying to understand it. It's sort of like a down payment that we make in some form of behaviour, with a hope or an expectation that it will create future finance for us. Is that about right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Hit that pretty well, Kyron.
Okay, that's good. So help us then understand what COVID-19 means for a typical client at the moment.
Yeah, look, the economic impact is really a prolonged interruption of income, and that's whether it be from employment, business, or remittances, which have actually collapsed. We know income is unlikely to return to pre-crisis levels for months. We also know that income stoppages lead to rapid depletion of reserves and savings, which according to surveys, low-income people only have enough for minimum basic needs for about a week. So you can imagine with a 2 or 3 month interruption, the vast majority will have used up their financial reserves. So for poor people, human and social capital may well be the most important and certainly the most resilient of their assets. On the positive front, this crisis, unlike natural disasters, it's quite different because, premises and tools have not been damaged, farming land is still as fertile, and in some cases inventory would have been preserved. So this means the supply side businesses can restart after the lockdown. However, the longer the crisis goes, some will lose their physical assets because they'll need them to sell them to buy food, or they might lose their house because they need to pay rent. So a key asset in their business is their business and social relationships, many of which will remain, and it really will be central to recovery moving forward. But probably the best news is the poor, they retain their know-how, and this is what microfinance institutions are going to have to bank on. It's kind of this human capital, their creativity, and their fight for the future of their families.
That's their ingenuity. You can't take that from them. So that's beautiful. And in saying that as well, you must have met so many opportunity clients through your time working for the organisation. Is there some particular that have stuck with you?
Yeah, look, I love getting out into the field. Probably met thousands of clients over the years, but there was one very memorable visit to a dump site in Manila, where there was a large recycling industry established around the dump site. And I'd like to introduce you to Anna, who was a scavenger on the rubbish dump for 20 years, who was given a microfinance loan. Before I play this short video, I need to let you know that Anna has since passed away due to a heart condition. But the last time I spoke with Anna, she wanted her story to be told. So this video is really a memory of a life transformed.
Kung nagsimula ka sa mababa, marunong ka tumingin sa pinanggalingan mo. Dito, nung nakarating ako, akala ko hanggang dito na lang din ako. Kasi pag uwi namin sa bahay, walang pagkain. Kanya-kanya kami magkakapatid, paano kami makakain. Ang alam namin, mabuti yun. Nasusuka ka na sa mga dumi na nahahawakan mo, naaamoy mo. Parang immune na ako. Parang gusto ko naman maano yung sariwang hangin. Yung maganda, yung malinis ako, yung maayos ako. Nakakita ako sa mga kapitbahay namin, may mga laruan sila, magaganda. Nilait nila kami kasi kami ay mga bata daw lansangan, iwasan daw kami. Dito na lang din ako. Hanggang tambakan na lang din ako kasi kaming 4 na magkakapatid, puro kami scavenger. Walang kwentang tao ko naman kung habang buhay doon na lang ako. Kaya pagkagising ko ng maaga, ang saya-saya ko kasi hindi ako makapaniwala na ito na, meron na akong sariling negosyo.
Yeah, Anna was, so proud of her business that she'd created. Many of her customers were scavengers, and that was because a lot of the other businesses would not serve clients because of the stench as they were coming off the dump site. I'll never forget visiting their modest home, watching their kids do their homework, and the joy in that family. It was a really special visit, and a special client. But I also want to introduce you to the story of the daughter of a microfinance client named Amina Mendez. Amina's father was a tricycle driver, and her mother a microfinance client, who one of the businesses was to go door to door selling fish balls. Amina was always poor growing up, but her parents committed to sending her to the best schools. Now, Amina was very bright, so bright that she actually topped the mathematics at the University of the Philippines, one of the best universities in the Philippines. And she went on to study in the States at Ohio Wesley University, winning maths prizes and actually topping her class. When I first met Amina, her only dream was really to earn enough money to fix the hole in the roof of her parents' home. Rain used to come in and flood the house. And I remember visiting her house and seeing this hole in the roof, and also where she slept on bamboo slates, and also, the tiny old wooden study desk where she performed brilliantly. But Amina, she's since gone on to get a full scholarship to Georgetown University in the States, where she graduated, again, top of her class in the Masters of Public Policy. And I have no doubt at some stage she'll get a PhD. But all Amina really needed was an opportunity, and many like her, and that's what microfinance does. It does provide that opportunity for poor people to lift themselves out of poverty. I've since visited Amina's parents, and they are very proud members of a new 2-3 bedroom home, which Amina was able to help finance. So a tremendous success story. So look, it's been a fascinating, rich journey. What I have discovered, whether you're rich or poor, we're all looking for the same three things in life, and that is really something to do, which is a job, someone to love, a family, friends, or community, and something to hope for, which is a better future or a faith. I think George Bernard Shaw said it well. He said there are two sources of unhappiness in life. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting it. I was certainly looking in all the wrong places in my late teens and early 20s. So what have I personally learnt? I've kind of learnt that, money is a great servant but a terrible master. And the real measure of wealth is how much you're worth if you've lost all your money. And that was most exemplified when I saw the devastation after Typhoon Yolanda in the Philippines, and just saw the lives of the people, and the smile and the joy still, and the resilience of people in the Philippines. I also never forget my very first visit to India. I was in Chennai in May, and I would never recommend that because of the heat and humidity. It must be about 50 degrees and about 85% humidity. So I remember visiting the slums all day, and coming to our last client, and I was obviously in distress, suffering dehydration. And the client sent her son off to get me 2 cans of Coke, which was so much appreciated. But after that, I remember asking the loan officer, how much would that client have earned for the day through her business, which was a door-to-door ironing service. So she had this old wooden cart that she used as an ironing board, and this iron that was heated with burning charcoal. So you can imagine the heat coming off that. But I found out that the 2 cans of Coke were the equivalent of 50% of her income for the day. And what that taught me is giving is never a percentage issue. It's always a hard issue. I think finally one enduring image from the field I have is when a client was telling me her life story, and she was smiling back with one tooth coming out of a gum, and she said, "I can now make it on my own." And that was, certainly a life transformed, and that is what you are supporting through Supporting Opportunity International.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you, Mark. There's some questions coming through, and keep them coming from the Q&A box down the bottom. First up, what is it that prevents people getting out of poverty? What stops that?
Poor people are poor because, others who are more powerful neglect, exploit, or oppress them. Poverty is an issue of injustice and denial of rights. I often it's kind of called systemic poverty, where most people are born into it and their fate is dictated and controlled by it. I have a good friend who's spent 18 years as a missionary living in one of the worst slums in Manila, and always enjoy listening to his stories. And, he was telling me that in the early days when he was in the Philippines, he said, to get a job, you had to have a birth certificate. And the catch was that you had to renew your birth certificate every year. Now, the cost of a birth certificate wasn't much. It was like $4. But if you're a family of 6, that's $24. So a lot of the poor just don't bother renewing their birth certificates. So they're immediately not able to get a job. I think that has changed. But the other thing that he shares is with the education system in the slums. You might have 80 to 100 kids in a classroom. Some of the wealthier parents will actually pay extra for their kid to sit next to the only fan in the classroom, which, if you know Manila heat, is definitely an advantage. And also, sometimes you've just got to pay the teachers to mark your exam papers because of their meagre income. So it really is a perpetual cycle of keeping the poor oppressed. And it really deprives millions of people of their daily bread by stealing the fruit of their labour, and keeps them in social misery.
I remember actually visiting that slum with you when I visited Manila. And there's a couple of people on this call or on this webinar who were there as well, and just incredible insight and the overwhelmingness, if that's a word that I just made up, of poverty. And that kind of leads into the next question that I've got here as well from someone. I found that challenging. What are you most challenged by when you look at the world around us?
I think the inequality gap. When you look around the world, countries are becoming more equal, but the inequality within countries is becoming more extreme. And I think that's particularly dangerous, which, can increasingly foster civil unrest, etc. But, the worst example is the Philippines, where the top 40 families actually own 70% of the wealth, which is an incredible statistic. I often recall what David Basso, the founder of Opportunity International, used to talk about. He used to talk about the economics of enough. And for those of you that don't know the story of David, he was brought up as an orphan. He was a born entrepreneur. He's selling hot dogs down at the footy. At the age of 14, he ended up going into building, into property development. And he was very successful by about the age of 35. But he tells his story about when Kerry Packer, one of his clients, called him at 2 a.m. one morning and asked him to come over and fix the door on I think it was the wine cellar door, basically, at 2 a.m. in the morning. And I think David realised that he needed to get himself a life. There's also another great book by an author called Bob Beauford, who's written a book called Half Time. And it's really about changing your game plan from success to significance, really talking about the second half of your life. You want it to be more impactful than the first. You've really got to move out of your safety and stop living your life on autopilot, I suppose. So, one of the most exciting challenges, conversely, if you want a life of significance, is, we need to think about how we can create new ways to deliver micro moments of value to the 2 billion undeserved poor in the world. Now, that's a challenge.
Yeah, that's great. Another question here. What are the key trends that you see for microfinance in the next 5 years?
Look, the fundamentals of microfinance industry are changing. The future is, already happening, as they say. But I think, given the impact of COVID-19, I would expect the digitisation of microfinance to speed up and take place probably over the next 12 months, as opposed to the next 5 years. I think you'll find that in a number of industries. We know that agents operating locally with mobile technology will revolutionise access to finance, because they'll be able to lower costs, which will benefit both the clients and microfinance service providers. We kind of call that the Uberization of agents. So agents that have the liquidity where the poor can cash in and cash out from their mobile wallets is absolutely essential. So, which will solve the problem of what I often call, it's expensive to be poor. And I always give the example of, say you're a remote agricultural worker and you've got to travel to the nearest financial service provider. It might be 4 hours away. So it means, giving up a day's labor, paying for the transportation costs to get there. So the future is really about providing affordable, accessible, secure financial services closer to the doorstep. So I think the eventual long-term winners, will be financial service providers that invest in strengthening their alternative delivery channels. That could be agents, mobile money, ATMs, electronic banking, mobile banking, cards, and also call centres as well. So I think also money is going to become more demanding in terms of social performance. There's much greater focus on the social performance management area of microfinance. I often say that, opportunity is a social investor, and I think outcome-based impact investing is really going to be a key going forward. I think big data, credit scoring is the way forward, and incidentally, one of the key indicators for your credit score in the Philippines, if you're going to make a loan repayment, is actually the number of Facebook friends that you have. So there's the influence of the social network as well in that area. So I think the future of microfinance, it's going to be a customer-driven financial life leveraging of digital technology.
I'm going to need some more Facebook friends by the looks of it. There's a comment that's coming from Facebook, and I just want to highlight this. The most important thing is how to maintain the sustainability of the income generating. I think that's probably one of the key things at the moment, especially with coronavirus. And then there's a question around how has COVID-19 impacted on the way that opportunity operates in Asia so far? What's changed in the loan conditions? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, look, the need is liquidity, basically for the microfinance institutions as well. We know that the poor have not been, can't repay in the midst of a lockdown, for example. So we are doing, we're providing restructuring of loans. We will offer top-up loans and emergency loans going forward, but we really have to listen closely to our client base and understand what they're going through at the moment, because obviously, it's going to be microfinance is going to be incredibly important more than ever post the pandemic. So people are really going to need access to finance. So, we're really, microfinance institutions are the best available channel for support. We've got established trusted relationships, last mile infrastructure, and decades of experience in providing innovative solutions. So, microfinance is pretty well positioned post the pandemic.
Yeah. Do you happen to have any numbers on what the current repayment rate is for opportunity at the moment?
Look, it's a bit hard to get that statistic just because
I'm asking the hard questions, Mark. We're getting down to it now.
A lot of India is still in lockdown still, but I think Simon shared last week that about 60% of clients are repaying. I mean, what we do know is that clients will repay because what they want out of a microfinance institution is that stability of access to credit. So they want to retain, it's one of the 8 sources of access to finance. So that's why they inevitably do repay their loans.
Yep. So the final message that you would like to send to supporters and people looking to connect with opportunity around kind of the work and COVID-19?
I think at stake is a decade worth of poverty alleviation efforts. So I think COVID-19 really should make us all think about extreme poverty and extreme inequality. And as I said before, microfinance is very well positioned to serve the poor. I mean, ultimately, development is a distribution challenge, and with microfinance, we have client bases in the millions, so tremendous systems and networks in place to reach the less fortunate.
And just you mentioned the last mile infrastructure before. Can you just unpack that for me a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's like because we have a great distribution network, we have access to the very remote rural clients, so we can actually add other development services on top of the microfinance platform. You would have heard Jess in the first webinar speak about the community health workers. So, we can add additional poverty alleviation mechanisms on top of the microfinance distribution platform. So that's really the last mile infrastructure that's been built over 40 years it's really rich into the communities that we can serve.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. And thank you everyone for your questions tonight. That's been really helpful and insightful. We may not have been able to get to all of them. So if there's something that you've asked and we haven't got to, then just reach out to us. We'll have a chat with you directly. What can we do next as we get prepared to finish up tonight? The first thing that you can do is stay informed. And part of being on this webinar with us is you staying informed. So thank you so much for that. But you can connect with our various communications that we have at Opportunity, like our agency magazine. There are other trusted sources that you might know of as well, online or other publications. We'd also love you to bring other people along with you on this journey. So as you receive the email in the next day or so, which has the recording of this webinar, feel free to watch it again, but also forward that on to someone else that you think that might be interested in it. We've made mention of the other 2 webinars that have happened in the last few weeks as well. You can find them on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel. Just really absolutely worth a watch to connect with Jessica Carter and Simon Lynch, staff members of Opportunity, and talking about the work that we're involved in. So that's a really good place to start. Also, you can donate. As you can see on that slide there, opportunity.org.au. Our crisis appeal is on our website. We have needs here in Australia, but also now more than ever, the most vulnerable people, the families that Opportunity helps, they need our help. So as Mark's mentioned, small loans are crucial for families to endure and overcome poverty through their businesses during this pandemic and beyond. And so you can donate a lump sum, or you can also sign up monthly to do some monthly giving if that's of service to you. And please get in touch with us as well. We're a fairly friendly bunch, and we'd love to connect with you one-on-one and have a conversation, even in person at some stage in the near future, perhaps, or at least over the phone, or we could do a Zoom call. We'd love to share more with you about what you can do and being part of the Opportunity family. I wanted to thank you again, Mark, for being part of tonight. It has been quite extraordinary. I've really enjoyed hearing about Anna and Amina and your experience across the last couple of decades. And yeah, I think it's been a real benefit to us. So thank you very much for being part of it tonight. The book, Bob Beaufort, that was Halftime. Is that the one?
Yes, Karen.
Yeah, excellent. So Bob Beaufort, Halftime was what Mark was talking about. So check that out if you're interested in something to read. That's all we have for now. Thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to connecting with you sometime in the future. Enjoy your evening, and very much so, stay safe and healthy.